$2. The boy sways where he stands. His wrists are tied loose with rope meant for calves. Blood spots the sawdust at his boots. Laughter rolls through the barn like it is part of the sale. Hell, he ain't worth feed. He won't last the week. The auctioneer wipes sweat from his lip. $2 for the sick one. Any higher? The boy coughs hard. Red hits the floor again. He does not wipe it. He just stares down at it like he expected it. $3, a woman's voice says. Silence snaps tight across the room. Men turn. Hats tilt. Boots shift. She stands at the edge of the ring in black. Dust clings to the hem of her dress. Her wedding band catches the lantern light. She does not step forward yet. She just watches. Sheriff Calhoun exhales slow. "Ma'am," he says low, "this ain't charity hour." She keeps her eyes on the boy. 5. A murmur moves through the barn. The auctioneer squints at her. "You serious, ma'am?" She nods once. Old rancher Briggs spits tobacco near the rail. "You buying him for labor?" She looks at Briggs now. Her face is plain. Tired. Hard. "No," she says. "I'm buying him because you're killing him." The boy's knees buckle. He hits the dirt. No one moves to catch him. Calhoun steps closer to her. His badge glints. "You don't know what he's got." She answers without blinking. "I know what you are." A few men shift uncomfortably. Calhoun's jaw tightens. He's county responsibility. Then the county failed. The auctioneer clears his throat. His voice is smaller now. $5. Going once. No one speaks. Going twice. Briggs laughs under his breath. "Let her learn." "Sold," the auctioneer says. The gavel strikes wood. The sound is sharp. Final. The rope is untied. No one helps him up. She walks into the ring herself. Her boots press into the bloody sawdust. She kneels beside the boy. He flinches when her hand reaches him. "It's all right," she says quietly. "What's your name?" He hesitates. His lips tremble. "Samuel." Briggs snorts. "Not anymore." He won't live long enough to answer. Her jaw tightens. She slips one arm behind Samuel's back, the other under his legs. He is lighter than she expected. Too light. He smells like fever and dirt. Samuel whispers, "You paid?" "Yes." "Why?" She stands slowly with him in her arms. "Because they said you weren't worth anything." Calhoun blocks the barn door. "Widow," he says softly, almost gentle, "you don't need trouble." Her eyes meet his. There is no fear in them. Only something settled. "I buried my husband," she says. "Trouble already lives with me." The barn is quiet now. Even Briggs looks away first. Calhoun steps aside, but his voice follows her. "You won't keep him long." She shifts Samuel higher against her chest. "That's not your decision." Samuel coughs against her shoulder. His fingers clutch weakly at the fabric of her dress. Outside, the air is cooler. Cleaner. She does not look back at the barn. Behind her, boots scrape on wood. Men murmur low. Calhoun stands in the doorway watching her walk toward the road. His eyes narrow, not angry, not surprised. Measuring. Briggs joins him. "She'll lose the ranch," Briggs mutters. Calhoun keeps his gaze fixed on her retreating figure. "Maybe." She's alone. Calhoun's voice drops. "No one's alone in this county." Samuel lifts his head weakly against her shoulder. "Ma'am?" "Yes. They said I was sold once before." Her grip tightens. "You're not being sold again." He closes his eyes. She walks down the dirt road without stopping, carrying him away from the barn, away from the laughter, while behind her the sheriff remains in the doorway, watching, calculating, already deciding what her defiance will cost. She pushes the door open with her shoulder. It slams against the wall. The boy burns in her arms. His breath comes fast and shallow against her collarbone. "Don't die," she whispers. "Not in my house." She lays him on the old bed in the back room. The mattress dips where her husband once slept. For a second her hands freeze on the blanket. Then the boy jerks and coughs and the moment passes. His eyes snap open. "They said I was cursed." "Who said that?" "The men." She dips a cloth into cold water and presses it to his forehead. "Men say things when they're scared." "I ain't cursed," he says, but it sounds like a question. "No," she answers. "You're sick." He coughs harder. Red stains the rag. She does not react. She just folds it and reaches for another. Boots crunch outside. Slow. Heavy. A knock. She does not leave the bedside. It's open. Sheriff Calhoun steps in. He removes his hat but does not lower his eyes. "You need a doctor." "I sent for one." "You don't have the money." "I have land." "And after the land?" She wrings the cloth once. Water drips onto the floorboards. She does not answer. Calhoun looks at the boy. "He's got lung rot." "You a doctor now?" "I'm a realist." She stands. "Then be realistic somewhere else." Calhoun studies her a long moment. "You can still return him." Her voice turns flat. "Close the door on your way out." He hesitates, then steps back into the yard. The door shuts. The house feels smaller after he leaves. Samuel shifts on the bed. "He gonna take me?" "No." "They always do." She sits beside him. "Not this time." Hours pass slow. The house grows dim. She lights one lamp. Shadows crawl across the walls. Samuel mutters in his sleep. Words she cannot catch. The doctor arrives near dark, smelling of whiskey and sweat. He sets his bag on the table. "Where is he?" "Back room." He leans over the boy, presses fingers to his throat, listens to his chest. Samuel flinches. "Easy," the doctor mutters. "I ain't here to sell you." Samuel whispers, "Promise?" The doctor glances at her. "Promise." He listens longer. His face tightens. "He's septic. Could be rot in the lungs. Fever's high. Save him." The doctor looks at her. "Why?" She does not blink. "Because I couldn't save my husband." Silence stretches between them. The doctor's eyes soften just a little. "I'll try." He pours bitter medicine into a spoon. Samuel turns his head. "Drink," she says. "It'll hurt." "Yes." He swallows it anyway. The doctor works until his hands steady. He leaves powders and instructions. At the door he pauses. "This could take weeks." "I'll sit for weeks." "You'll lose sleep." "I don't sleep." He studies her face once more, then steps into the dark. Night settles heavy over the house. Wind presses against the boards like hands. Samuel begins to shake. "There's a well," he gasps. "They pushed someone in." She grips his shoulders. "There's no well near here." "There is," he insists. "I saw it." Her breath catches. Years ago there had been one. Her husband sealed it after an accident. He died not long after. She never asked questions. She never dug. Samuel claws at the blanket. He was shouting. They laughed. "Who?" "The men." "What men?" He squeezes his eyes shut. Badges. Her hand stills. Outside, the wind slams the shutters. The sound is close to knocking. She rises and walks to the window. The backfield lies dark and flat. Somewhere beyond it, under packed dirt and memory, the well sits buried. She returns to the bed. Samuel's skin is slick with sweat. Stay, he whispers. I am. Don't let them push me. No one's pushing you. You promise? She presses her forehead lightly to his. I promise. His breathing turns uneven. She wipes his face again, cool and steady. The house creaks around them. Old wood. Old silence. Samuel's fingers find hers in the dark. He holds tight, like he expects the floor to give way. She does not pull free. Near dawn his fever spikes again. He cries out once, sharp and raw. Then he falls quiet. Too quiet. She leans close, counting each breath. 1, 2, 3. Outside, pale light creeps across the field. It touches the place where the earth dips slightly in the distance. The spot no one speaks of. She watches it through the window while still holding his hand. The wind dies down. The house goes still. Behind her, Samuel murmurs in his sleep, softer now. There's a well, he whispers. Her eyes do not leave the field. She rides into town just as the sun hits the rooftops. Dust curls behind the horse, and the sheriff's office sits heavy and silent at the end of the main street. She dismounts and steps onto the boardwalk. Calhoun is behind his desk, leaning back, fingers laced. His badge glints in the morning light. I'm keeping him, she says. He raises an eyebrow. He's county property. He's a child. He's trouble, he mutters. She slams her husband's old badge onto the desk. Metal clinks sharp. He wore this. Calhoun stares at it. That badge died with him. Did it? Samuel lies in bed back at the ranch, fevered and restless. His lips move in quiet mutters. They pushed him, he whispers over and over. She presses him. Who? He shakes his head violently. Don't know. Don't. Hours later, Briggs rides up to her gate. His horse snorts. You don't want that boy digging up ghosts, he says, voice low and rough. I don't believe in ghosts, she answers. You should, Briggs says. He spits into the dirt. This county buries things that don't want to be buried. Samuel shifts in his sleep that night. Why'd they hate your husband? She stiffens, clutching the blanket. Who told you that? He shakes his head. Silence fills the room. Evening comes. She saddles her horse and rides to the edge of the backfield. The earth has settled oddly where the old well is buried. She dismounts, letting her boots sink into loose soil. Fingers brush the dirt. Something beneath it shifts, just slightly. Calhoun's shadow falls across the ground. You digging? Thinking, she says. Her eyes narrow. You're playing with county history. She looks at him coldly. History ain't yours. The wind picks up. Boards creak on the old barn nearby. The scent of damp earth and rotting wood hangs thick. Her horse whinnies, restless, snorting against the wind. Samuel tosses and moans in his sleep at the ranch. They pushed him. Into the dark. Screaming. She grips the reins tighter. I know. A crow calls, sharp, sudden. She watches it land on a fence post near the well. Its black eyes glint. Silence settles after it flies. Briggs' voice calls faintly from down the road. You should leave him be. I won't, she whispers. Calhoun steps closer. You won't survive this alone. I survived before, she says. I'll survive again. She drops to her knees beside the sunken earth. Fingers trace the ground. Dust sifts between her hands. She remembers her husband here, trying to fix the well, sealing it after the accident that no one mentions. Samuel shifts in his sleep. Don't let them push me. I won't, she mutters under her breath. The soil crumbles slightly under her fingers. A hollow sound, like a sigh from the ground itself. She freezes. Her eyes lift to the field. Something moves beneath the dirt. Calhoun's voice breaks the quiet again. Widow. You're not thinking straight. She stares at him. I think clearer than you ever will. Her horse paws the earth nervously. The sun dips lower. Shadows stretch across the field like reaching hands. Samuel moans, fevered, tossing his small body against blankets. He was pushed into the well. Screaming. She clenches her teeth. I know. I know. Calhoun shifts, uneasy. You can't fight the county. Watch me, she says. The wind kicks up. Loose soil scatters. Her hands brush against something firm. A piece of wood? No, something beneath. A shift beneath the packed dirt. Her stomach tightens. Briggs' voice calls again, further down the road. Stop before it finds you. It won't find me, she mutters. The shadow of the well seems larger now, a dark circle in the backfield. She studies the earth carefully. Every inch feels like it holds secrets, buried screams. Samuel whispers again in fevered sleep, almost coherent. The sheriff pushed him, the badge. She presses her hand against her forehead. Her horse stamps. The dirt beneath the old well creaks. Something moves. Calhoun steps closer. Widow. Step away. This is bigger than you know. I don't care how big it is, she says. I won't let them hide it again. The sun dips past the horizon. Shadows swallow the field. She feels the ground shift again beneath her hands. Her heart hammers, hot and raw. Samuel mutters names in his sleep. Samuel. Samuel, they pushed the badge. Her fingers dig deeper. Dust clouds her knees. She exhales sharp, trying to steady herself. Calhoun turns to leave. You'll regret this. I already regret nothing, she says. Briggs' horse stomps in the distance. A crow screams from the trees lining the field. Samuel shifts violently, sweat pouring down his face. The ground beneath the sunken well gives one last subtle creak. She stiffens, senses sharp. Something stirs under the soil. Her eyes lift toward the darkening horizon. The field is empty now, but the feeling of eyes beneath the earth presses in. Her hands stay on the soil. Samuel murmurs again, half awake, half dreaming, they pushed him, the badge. She closes her eyes briefly. Breath comes quick. She presses her palm against the dirt one last time for the night. The wind dies to a hush. Boards creak in the distance. Shadows lengthen and darken. She sits on her heels, still holding the space where secrets lie beneath the old sunken well. Nothing moves but the memory buried in the dirt, waiting. Sheriff Calhoun arrives at the ranch just past sunrise, boots crunching over the frost-hardened ground. 2 deputies follow behind him, faces taut, hands hovering near holsters. He stops at the porch and surveys the house with a weight that makes the air tight. You're harboring property, he says. She doesn't move from the steps. Samuel lies on the bed behind her, sheets tangled around his thin frame. He's not a mule, she says. Calhoun exhales slow. The board says sick children drain funds. They're costly. So you sell them? Her voice is low but steady. Deputy Harris snorts. Better than letting them starve. Samuel stirs in the back room. You're gonna sell me back? She turns to him sharply. No. He grips her sleeve with weak fingers. They drown the ones that won't sell. Silence presses down on them. Even the wind outside seems to hold its breath. Names, she says. I want names. Samuel leans weakly on the bedframe, voice trembling. Old families, he whispers. Briggs. The others. Her jaw tightens. Hours later, she finds the ledger in her husband's desk. It's thick with dust, leather cracked, corners bent. She flips pages carefully, scanning rows of names. Missing boys. Dates. Locations. Briggs' name appears again and again. Her hands shake slightly. That evening she rides into town. She doesn't slow as she dismounts in the square. Calhoun notices her approach and straightens in his chair. She steps up to the crowd gathered near the general store and confronts him. You killed my husband, she says, voice cutting through the chatter. A hush falls. The townsfolk shift uncomfortably. Hats tilt low. Children hide behind mothers. Calhoun's jaw tightens. Careful, he says, voice low but firm. Did he find the ledger, she presses. He swallows. No answer comes. Silence stretches. The weight of it presses on everyone present. Doubt spreads through the crowd like wildfire. Night falls. She rides back to her house. Torches flare outside, men's shadows stretching across the dirt. Samuel watches from the window, fever weak but alert. She dismounts and pulls him into her arms for a brief moment before entering. The wind carries whispers of judgment, fear, and memory. Her horse nickered softly before she leads it into the corral. Inside, she sets the ledger on the table. Dust rises in thin clouds from the cracked wood. Names stare back at her. Faces of children swallowed by the county screed. The smell of old paper and earth hangs thick. She hears Briggs' voice outside, carried on the wind. You're meddling where you shouldn't. I'm uncovering what you tried to hide, she mutters. Samuel coughs softly behind her. They'll come, he says. They already have, she replies, touching the ledger's spine. And they'll be seen. Calhoun returns, less confident now, and watches from the edge of the property. He shifts on his feet, glances toward the torches and the shadows they cast. The authority he once held seems thinner, less certain. Inside, she sits at the table with Samuel, eyes scanning every page, memorizing every name. Outside, torches burn high, men whisper and fume. The tension stretches from the porch to the edge of town. The ledger is proof. Evidence of a system that sold children under the guise of care. She picks up Samuel, carrying him to the back room. His head rests against her shoulder. She whispers, "We'll survive this, Samuel. No one else will claim you." The wind rattles boards, carrying a faint cackle from the dark field beyond. She tightens her grip. Torches flicker against the walls, shadows bending like hands reaching for the house. Briggs' horse snorts from the edge of the property. Calhoun shifts in the yard, aware that power is no longer absolute. She closes the door against the night. The ledger waits on the table, open to a page listing Briggs' name repeatedly. Outside, men whisper, threaten, and stir fire in their eyes. Inside, she sits with Samuel and the knowledge of what must be done. The house creaks. Dust falls from the rafters. Samuel coughs again, weak but steady enough to whisper, "They'll come?" "They already have," she repeats. Her voice is calm, quiet, determined. "And they won't find you again." Torches burn outside, casting long shadows across the yard. Men whisper threats they hope she cannot hear. But she does. She sits beside Samuel, hands on his small shoulders, knowing this is just the beginning. The chapter closes with flames flickering against the dark house, the ledger open to names that will not be forgotten, and the county's power beginning to fracture under the weight of secrets finally uncovered. Samuel's cough rattled through the thin walls of the back room. He lay tangled in blankets, sweat clinging to his skin, shaking like the wind outside the house. She knelt beside him, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead. "Why me?" he whispered. "Because they said you weren't worth anything," she said, her voice steady but low. "Am I?" "You are now." She held his gaze, refusing to let him see fear in her eyes. The lamp between them cast long shadows across the walls, making the room feel smaller, tighter. The doctor arrived mid-morning, bag in hand, breath smelling of whiskey and iron. He glanced at Samuel. "He may not make winter," he said quietly, adjusting the boy's blankets. "Then winter can fight me," she answered sharply. She refused to look at him as fragile, even as his chest heaved with each shallow breath. Outside, the wind carried voices. Briggs rode slowly past the porch, spitting into the dirt. His expression was cold, hard. Foreclosure papers sat on her desk, threatening the land she had inherited from her husband. She could see the county moving against her. "Sign it," Briggs called, voice cutting across the yard. "Or you lose everything." "I'll not sign," she said. "Not for him." The sheriff arrived shortly after, his shadow long across the floorboards. "You'll end alone," he warned, voice low but insistent. "I already was," she said, gripping Samuel's wrist to still him as he coughed violently. Later, Samuel spoke again, voice barely audible. "They pushed your husband. He was at the well." She froze, hands clenching the blankets beneath his small frame. "Who?" "Sheriff," he whispered. The words fell between them like stones into water. The sound of his fevered breathing was louder than the wind outside. She held him close, letting the heat of his fever press against her chest. Her jaw tightened. Her hand rested over his heart. She could feel the tremor, small but persistent, that refused to die even under her careful watch. She rose, pacing the small room. The doctor murmured over a bottle of tincture. "Keep him warm. Keep him hydrated. But the fever's strong." "I will," she said, her voice hard as flint. She ripped the foreclosure papers from the desk, burned them in the fireplace. Flames hissed and licked at the edges of the paper. The scent of smoke filled the room, mingling with the faint metallic tang of Samuel's blood from coughing. Samuel weakly lifted his head. "Ma'am?" "Yes," she said, returning to his side. "They pushed him?" "Yes," she whispered, brushing damp hair from his face. "And we're not going to let them do it again." He shivered violently, small body racked with chills. "I can't. I can't." "Shoo. You can. You will," she said firmly. "I'm not letting go of you." Hours passed in fever and whispered reassurances. Each time he coughed, her hand pressed harder against his chest. Each time he moaned in pain, she held him closer, silent prayers on her lips. She refused to leave him, even for a moment, though her body ached and the fire in the hearth dwindled. Later that night, she picked up her husband's old rifle from the corner, feeling the cold wood and iron in her hands. It was heavy, familiar, a reminder of both loss and strength. Samuel's eyes, fever-bright and wary, followed every movement. "Why?" he asked, voice small, trembling. "Because no one's going to hurt you," she said, shouldering the rifle. "Not tonight. Not ever." Outside, the wind howled through the boards of the old house. Shadows flickered across the walls as the lamplight wavered. The faint sound of hooves echoed on the dirt road, Briggs' threats still ringing in her ears, the sheriff's warnings lingering like a cold fog. Samuel coughed again. Blood spattered against the blanket. She did not flinch. Instead, she pressed the cloth to his lips, murmuring, "Stay. Fight. You're not theirs. You're mine." He blinked slowly, shivering, small fists clutching at the edges of the blanket. "Mine," he whispered. "Yes," she said. "All yours. Always." She sat back on the floor beside the bed, letting his head rest against her shoulder. She listened to each shallow breath, counted each pulse, watched the rise and fall of his chest. Outside, night deepened, shadows solidifying in the corners of the room. Every sound carried weight. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind, reminded her of the world pressing against them. Samuel's voice rose again, fevered. They laughed at him." "Not here," she said firmly. "No laughter. Not in this house." She held him through the night, refusing to sleep, refusing to let go, even as the fire burned low and the wind battered the walls. By dawn, his shivering had lessened slightly. His breath was still uneven, but steady enough that she allowed herself a small measure of relief. The wind carried the smell of earth and frost through the open window. The house felt heavier, more burdened, but safe, for now. She pressed a kiss to his damp hair. "We'll survive this, Samuel. You and I. We're not theirs." His fingers curled weakly around hers. "Not theirs?" "No," she whispered. "Never theirs again." The first pale light of morning touched the backfield. Somewhere beneath the soil, the old well waited, silent. She could feel its presence in the stiff earth, in the ache of her arms, in the quiet rhythm of Samuel's breathing against her chest. She tightened her grip, whispered, "I am here. I won't leave. Stay with me." He murmured against her shoulder, "I am." Outside, the wind slowed. Shadows shrank. Inside, she held him close, refusing to surrender him to fever, to the county, or to the ghosts that lingered in the land they both claimed silently. Dawn breaks over the field, pale light spilling across frost-tipped grass. She kneels at the edge of the sunken earth, hands raw from digging. Samuel sits on the porch, wrapped in blankets, shivering but upright enough to watch. His small hands rest on the railing as he follows every motion. Calhoun rides up suddenly, spurs jangling, face red with anger. "Stop now," he shouts, voice cracking over the quiet morning. She doesn't look at him. She keeps digging. Soil crumbles under her fingers. Each scoop feels heavier than the last, each handful a defiance. Deputies linger behind the sheriff, uncertain. They shift from foot to foot, eyes darting between the widow and their superior. A bone surfaces. She freezes, hand hovering over it. Dust drifts down in thin clouds. Calhoun's eyes widen. He dismounts quickly. "How many?" she asks, voice low, sharp. Briggs tries to step forward, horse restless beneath him, but townsfolk appear at the edges of the yard, blocking him. Eyes narrowed, silent fists clenched. No one moves. Samuel whispers from the porch. "I told you." Calhoun's hand twitches near his gun. "You think this changes anything?" She lifts the badge from her pocket, the same one her husband wore. Sunlight glints off the metal. "This does," she says. One deputy slowly lowers his weapon. Another fidgets but stays silent. The sheriff glares, teeth grinding. The widow continues digging. A second bone comes free. Then another. She lets them lie in the dirt, visible proof of what was hidden too long. Calhoun's voice shakes now. It's not all." "It is," she interrupts. "Your county, your rules, your fear. But it ends here." Samuel steps closer to the edge of the porch, weak legs steadying him. He points. "There. That's where they pushed him." The sheriff's face pales. His hands ball into fists, then relax slowly as reality presses in. He draws, fingers trembling, but she doesn't flinch. She presses the badge closer to her chest. "This was his honor," she says. "He stood for justice. And now you stand exposed." Calhoun staggers back, words failing him. He confesses, voice low and breaking, they pushed him. We. The well becomes a literal tomb of county corruption, proof too undeniable to deny. The ground that had been silent for decades speaks now through bones and dust. Deputies move cautiously, reluctant to contradict her. One steps forward and grips Calhoun's arm. "He's going to jail," the deputy says. "All of it. Ledger, bones, everything." The sheriff's knees buckle slightly. He glances at the bones scattered in the earth, the badge in her hands, the crowd of townsfolk who no longer whisper but stare, judgment clear in their eyes. Briggs stands frozen, realizing that the power he wielded quietly for years has been upended in minutes. Samuel watches the scene, small body tense. "They won't hurt me," he whispers. "No," she says softly. "Not anymore." The widow kneels beside him, hands on his shoulders, steadying him. Dust from the excavation rises around them. The wind carries the smell of earth and decay, sharp and real, but it no longer feels threatening. She looks at the sheriff. You made your choice. You kept your secrets. But I kept mine too. I kept him. Calhoun swallows, broken. The badge, the bones, the ledger all converge as undeniable proof. Justice has begun, slow and physical, in the dirt and in the hands of the living. Samuel reaches for her hand. His fingers are weak but grasp hers tightly. You told me, he says. I did, she whispers. I told you, and I meant it. You stay. The deputies move to arrest Briggs quietly. The ledger is confiscated publicly. Calhoun is escorted away, flanked by his own men, confession still trembling from his lips. The widow stays kneeling, hands resting lightly on the boy. Her heart pounds. Dust clings to her skin. Sweat drips down her temples. She doesn't flinch. She does not apologize. Samuel coughs softly, lean body shivering in her arms. She brushes his hair back, whispering, You're safe. You're free. Above them, the wind carries the echoes of those buried, those silenced, and those who tried to wield power through fear. Now it carries acknowledgement, the beginning of truth. She lifts her gaze to the sky, watching pale morning stretch across the field, over the open well, over the houses that watched silently. For the first time in years, the land feels honest. Samuel leans against her shoulder, weak but alive. She presses the badge once more to her chest, then sets it aside. Bones, ledger, confession, they are the past now. Together, they watch the town reckon with what has been unearthed. The sheriff's authority lies fractured, Briggs restrained, and the ledger public. They breathe together, small exhalations in the cold morning air. Her hand tightens on Samuel's. He squeezes back, fragile but real. No words are needed. Justice has been unearthed. Truth has risen from the dirt. The well remains open, a monument, silent and undeniable. The day breaks fully, wind still, dust settling. She remains kneeling beside Samuel, watching, steady, unshaken. She will not leave. She will not falter. Samuel collapses onto the bed, sweat slick and trembling. His breathing comes in shallow bursts. The doctor leans over him, grim-faced. It's too late, he says quietly. She grips Samuel's hand, holding it like a lifeline. No, she says. Her voice is sharp, unyielding. Not here. Not tonight. He coughs violently, red flecks staining the blanket. Don't let me go back there, he whispers, eyes wide with fear. You're not going anywhere, she says. Her fingers dig into his small ones, holding him in place. The fire in the hearth flickers weakly. She tears the foreclosure notice she had saved into pieces and tosses it into the flames. The paper curls, hisses, and blackens. Smoke rises, filling the room with the scent of burned paper and promise. Outside, the town gathers quietly. No torches this time. Silence hangs thick in the air, broken only by the occasional shuffle of boots or murmur of onlookers. Briggs is being led away, cuffs clinking against his wrists. His expression is hard, defiant, but powerless. The deputy removes the county child ledger and holds it up for all to see. Names, dates, towns, proof of what had been done to children like Samuel. The townsfolk lean forward, whispers spreading through the crowd. Inside, she remains beside Samuel, hands on his shoulders, keeping him grounded in the room that smells of smoke, medicine, and fever. His small body shakes, but she does not release him. You're not property, she whispers. Her voice is steady, low, almost a chant. Samuel's eyelids flutter. He opens them faintly. Am I yours? You're free, she says softly. Her thumb brushes across his cheek. A long pause fills the room. Breathing slows, the heat of the fever gradually retreating. Samuel coughs once more, weaker, but steadier. He grips her hand, faint but strong enough to squeeze. She strokes his hair gently. You chose to stay. You chose life. That's enough. The wind outside shifts. The town waits, watching, learning that some things cannot be claimed by law or fear. She presses her forehead to his. We won't go back. No one pushes you anymore. Not the county. Not men like Briggs. Not ghosts. Samuel's breathing evens, and a tiny smile flickers on his lips. I'm safe? Yes, she says firmly. Safe and alive. The deputy places the ledger back on the steps, leaving proof in the open. The town begins to murmur softly, a ripple of understanding and relief spreading through the quiet. She sits with Samuel until his eyes close, faint warmth returning to his cheeks. He drifts into rest, still trembling but alive. She leans back, hands still on his small frame. The fire hisses, and shadows retreat slowly across the walls. Outside, the world has shifted, justice has been meted, truths exposed, and bones uncovered. The night stretches on, but inside, the room is calm. She watches over him, unwavering. No one speaks. No one moves. Survival has been claimed not through vengeance, but choice. The air feels lighter, though still thick with memory. She whispers one final time to Samuel. You're not theirs. You're not anyone's to take. You're free. Samuel's hand twitches, weakly squeezing hers in return. He breathes steadily now. The night grows quiet. The town sleeps in cautious awe. The ledger remains open, a reminder. Briggs sits behind bars. Calhoun is shaken. The county has been fractured. She remains seated beside Samuel until the first hints of dawn seep into the room. The fire burns low, but it is steady. Her hands press gently against his chest, feeling the slow, steady rise and fall. Relief presses against her ribs. Hope, tentative but real, settles into the space around them. The chapter ends with Samuel alive, fragile but breathing, held firmly by a woman who refused to surrender him to death, fear, or guilt. Morning arrives soft and pale, spilling across the porch and washing over the frost-tipped fence posts. Samuel sits wrapped in blankets, small shoulders hunched against the cold, eyes tracing the horizon. The house behind them is quiet, still holding the smell of smoke, medicine, and the remnants of the fire from last night. The sheriff's badge rests in her hands, polished and cold. Deputy Harris watches, standing stiffly nearby. You could run this place, he says carefully. She shakes her head. No more owning people, she says, voice quiet but firm. No more ruling through fear or law. Samuel tilts his head, still wrapped tightly in blankets. What happens now? We plant, she says. Her gaze sweeps the field, the open well marked with wooden crosses, the fence lines needing repair, the land breathing under pale morning light. Even if it fails? Yes, she replies. We plant anyway. Samuel's small hand slips into hers. He squeezes it, fragile but trusting. You bought me. No, she says softly, meeting his eyes. I chose you. They walk slowly across the yard, past the well that had once held secrets and bones. Each step presses into frozen soil, each movement a quiet affirmation. She feels the weight of history, but also the relief of choice, freedom carved from fear in memory. The wind lifts slightly, carrying the scent of earth and frost, brushing against the wooden crosses marking the well. Samuel squeezes her hand again, stronger this time, as if understanding the permanence of the moment. She gestures toward the fence, the broken posts leaning and cracked. We start here, she says. Together. He nods, small and solemn. Together. They work through the day. She lifts posts, sets them into the frozen ground, nails hammering with deliberate, steady rhythm. Samuel hands her the tools, learning balance and strength despite his frailty. Dust rises slowly in the morning sun, mingling with the scent of sawdust and soil. No speeches are made. No grand declarations. Just movement, steady and purposeful. Every nail driven, every post set, feels like a choice, a rejection of the county, of fear, of the ghosts that had haunted the land. She pauses, wiping sweat and dust from her brow, eyes lingering on the horizon. The town remains in quiet watchfulness, torches gone, whispers of scandal and confession fading into memory. Bones unearthed, ledger public, those who sought to claim children punished. Justice has been carved quietly and thoroughly. Samuel sets the last post beside her, hands small but steady. She lifts him onto the ground, brushing frost from his shoulders. "You're safe," she says. "This land won't take you. Not anymore." He gazes at the field, the crosses, the repaired posts. "I am?" "Yes," she says. "And you always will be." A crow caws from the edge of the field, wings cutting across the pale sky. She watches it lift and vanish. The wind carries the sound like a promise, a herald of quiet resilience. They continue slowly, moving from post to post, hand in hand. No grand gestures, no celebration. Just breath, land, survival. The sun climbs higher, dust settling, shadows shortening. The chapter closes with the widow and Samuel working together, side by side, past the sealed well, building fence posts. A subtle triumph, earned not through vengeance, but through choice, care, and the refusal to surrender to death, fear, or memory. The morning air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of earth and frost from the fields beyond. Samuel sits on the porch, blankets wrapped tight around him, small shoulders trembling slightly but upright. The house behind them is quiet, sun casting long shadows across the worn wood. The sheriff's badge sits on the railing beside her, polished and cold in the sunlight. She doesn't touch it. Deputy Harris stands near the gate, hands folded, watching them carefully. "You could run this place," he says softly. She shakes her head. "No more owning people. No more forcing survival through fear. Not here." Samuel tilts his head, eyes tracking her every move. "What happens now?" "We plant," she says. Her gaze sweeps across the yard, the open well marked by wooden crosses, the fields, the broken fence posts that need repair. "We plant the land, and ourselves, and whatever comes after." "Even if it fails?" "Yes," she says, her voice calm, deliberate. "Even if it fails, we plant anyway." Samuel's hand slips into hers. He squeezes gently, fragile but trusting. "You bought me." "No," she says softly, looking down at him. "I chose you." They walk slowly across the yard, past the old well, now open and marked, a grave of memory and justice. Each step presses into frozen soil. Each step is a refusal to let the past define them. She gestures toward the fence, leaning and broken in places. "We start here," she says. "Together." He nods, eyes wide, hands small but steady. "Together." They work in silence. She lifts posts, sets them into the hard ground, nails hammering with deliberate rhythm. Samuel hands her the tools, learning strength despite his frailty. Dust rises, mixing with the smell of sawdust and soil, carrying light across the yard. No speeches are made. No grand declarations. Each movement is proof of choice, resilience, and quiet resistance. Every post set, every nail driven, is a claim on survival. She pauses, wiping sweat from her brow, and watches the horizon. The town is distant, whispers of scandal fading, torches gone, bones unearthed, ledger public, Briggs gone, Calhoun fractured. The county's power is diminished, truth unearthed. Samuel sets the last post beside her. She lifts him onto the ground, brushing frost from his shoulders. "You're safe," she says. "This land won't take you. Not anymore." He looks at the field, the crosses, the fence posts. "I am?" "Yes," she says. "And you always will be." A crow caws from the edge of the field, wings cutting across the pale sky. She watches it lift and vanish. The wind carries the sound like a promise, a herald of quiet resilience. They continue moving slowly, from post to post, hand in hand. No grand gestures. No celebrations. Just breath, land, and survival. The sun climbs higher, shadows shrinking, dust settling, quiet work cementing strength. The final image lingers, the widow and Samuel rebuilding fence posts together, past the open well. She walks slightly ahead, hand in his, small but steady. They are free, together, resilient, refusing to let death, memory, or power dictate their lives. No speeches. No triumph. Just life. Dawn spills across the fields in soft gold. The wind moves slowly through the fence posts, brushing past the wooden crosses that mark the old well. Samuel sits on the porch, blankets wrapped tight, watching her move across the yard. Her hands are steady as she lifts a post from the ground, sets it into the frozen soil, nails clinking in rhythm. "You don't have to do it alone," he says quietly, voice small but steady. "I never have," she says, sliding her hand into his. They work side by side, steps measured, deliberate. Each post is a quiet defiance, a reclamation of the land, of themselves. The sheriff's badge rests on the porch railing, untouched. It glints faintly in the sun. Deputy Harris had offered it back, silently suggesting she take the county's authority, run the place, rule the land. She shook her head. "No," she said. "No more owning people." Samuel tilts his head, watching her closely. "You chose me," he says. "No," she whispers, voice soft but firm. "I chose you. I protect you because I want to. Not because I have to. Not because anyone told me to. You're not property." The wind lifts, rustling the tall grass beyond the fence. A crow rises from the edge of the field, wings cutting the morning light, and vanishes over the horizon. They pause, hands clasped, looking toward the open well. It is still, marked by crosses. Bones lie beneath, proof of past wrongs. But above ground, life moves forward. She brushes frost from Samuel's shoulder. "We start here," she says. "And wherever this land takes us, we take it together." He nods. "Even if it fails?" "We plant anyway," she says. They step slowly toward the first post, hammering in nails together. The sun rises fully, dust settling around them, shadows shrinking. Each strike of the hammer is deliberate, silent, a quiet claim on freedom. The town watches from a distance, whispers fading. Bones unearthed, ledger public, the sheriff fractured, Briggs gone. Justice has been done, not through violence, but through choice, patience, and steadfast refusal to surrender to power or fear. Samuel lifts a small hand, brushing it against hers. "I'm safe?" "Yes," she says firmly. "You always will be." They continue moving along the fence line, hand in hand, past the open well, past what once held secrets. No speeches. No triumph. Just life. Just survival. The final image stretches across the yard, a widow and a boy, rebuilding fence posts, walking side by side. Dust settles. Wind moves. Sun rises higher. Quiet resilience lingers over the land they claim together, not through vengeance, but through the choice to protect, to stay, to live. The story closes on them, hands clasped, the earth beneath their boots, the horizon ahead. No one owns them. Nothing can take them. They breathe, together, alive.